You ever notice something? They only doubt the one they secretly admire. They only bet against the one they quietly fear. When they say you can't do it, what they really mean is, I hope you don't. You walk into the room and they feel it. That shift, that presence, that power. You don't even speak, but they know this one is different. They can smell destiny. They can sense something unstoppable, and it scares them. So they laugh, they whisper, they roll their eyes and place their bets. He'll never make it. She's not ready. Bet against me. I dare you. Because what they forget, what they never understood, is that I don't run on approval. I don't need permission. I don't ask the world to validate what heaven already confirmed. I wasn't built to fit in. I was built to rise above. I don't get emotional when they turn. I don't get rattled when they lie, because I know who sent me. I know who I am. And when you know who you are, you'll stop explaining yourself to people who are never listening anyway. They think silence means weakness. They think my peace is me backing down. No, my silence is strategy. My peace is power. While they gossip, I grow. While they bet, I build. While they doubt, I dominate. I don't scream to prove I'm strong. I stay still, because I know storms obey voices like mine. Let them throw stones. Let them circle in fear. I don't flinch. I don't fold. I watch. I observe. And I advance. I don't chase applause. I chase alignment. I don't panic. I plan. Because when you operate from purpose, not ego, you're untouchable. When your spirit is anchored, your emotions don't own you. That's real strength. That's elite. That's chosen. People say, you're too calm. Yeah, I am, because while they're reacting, I'm revealing. I'm walking in divine timing. I don't need to rush. I don't need to respond. That doesn't rush, and neither do I. See, the people who bet against me, they don't know how this ends. They haven't read the script. They don't realize I already won in silence, that the breakthrough already happened in the invisible, in the spiritual, and now it's just playing out. So I laugh. I let them think they're winning, because the best victories, they're not the loud ones, they're the inevitable ones. They say, but he looks unfazed. That's right, because I am. I don't flinch when people walk away. I don't beg, I don't chase. Let them go. I'm not called to everyone. I'm called to impact, not approval. And if it takes isolation to reach elevation, so be it. I've walked through fire with no smoke. I've stood in storms and didn't blink, because I learned something most people never do. Emotional detachment is spiritual promotion. When you stop reacting, you start rising. When you stop needing them, you start owning you. So bet against me, mock me, misread me, misjudge me. That's your role. But me, I rise, I build, I conquer, I transform. And when it's all said and done, they'll say, how did he do it? Simple. I was never fighting for attention. I was fulfilling a calling. Ask ChatGPT. You said, expand the key point 1 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, greatness invites opposition because it forces people to confront their own limitations. When you start rising, when you begin walking in your purpose with confidence, you don't just step into your destiny, you disturb everything and everyone's still stuck in theirs. People don't bet against you because they're sure you'll lose. They bet against you because deep down they suspect you might win. And if you win, it means they were wrong to stay small. Your growth exposes their excuses. Your courage magnifies their fear. So they do the only thing weak spirits know how to do. They resist, they mock, they attack, not because you're failing, but because you're ascending. This is why every person who ever became something more than the crowd was first doubted, ridiculed, or misunderstood. Because the moment you step out of what's familiar, you become a threat to everything people have built around comfort. And people will protect comfort like it's sacred. They'll defend their own mediocrity while tearing apart your greatness, not because your greatness is wrong, but because it's inconvenient. You shine too bright, you move too fast, you think too big, and they've already made peace with being average. Your presence forces them to ask questions they don't want to ask. Why didn't I try harder? Why did I settle? Why did I wait? You become a walking contradiction to their narrative, and that's uncomfortable. Understand something, you're called to something higher. Resistance is confirmation, not condemnation. The attacks are a signal, not a setback. The people betting against you are doing you a favor. Because when they push, you push harder. When they say no, you go anyway. Greatness is forged in resistance. You don't grow in the applause, you grow in the pressure. And when everyone says you can't, but you still do, that's when the world has no choice but to look up. That's when your doubters become witnesses. And let's be honest, some people bet against you because they could never handle your journey. It's not even personal, it's spiritual. They weren't equipped to go where you're going. They don't have your capacity, your vision, your tenacity. So rather than rise, they criticize. It's easier to call your dream crazy than to admit they're scared to dream at all. And once you see that, once you understand that their doubt has more to do with their wounds than your worth, you stop taking it personal. You stop shrinking. You stop explaining. You just build. You just walk. You just become. So when the opposition shows up, don't get discouraged. Get excited. It means you're on the right path. It means your steps are being noticed. It means heaven moved and hell panicked. Greatness doesn't walk through a crowd unnoticed. It gets challenged, tested, and underestimated because its rise was never meant to be silent. So when they bet against you, when they laugh, when they talk, just smile because they don't even realize they're announcing your arrival. You said, expand the key point 2 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, detachment is dominance because the person who cannot be emotionally manipulated is the person who cannot be controlled. When you detach, truly detach from the need for validation, from the opinions of people, from the chaos of their energy, you step into a position of pure power. You no longer react to distractions. You no longer lower yourself to prove yourself. You move with purpose, not panic. The emotionally detached mind is a weapon. It sees everything. It responds to nothing prematurely. It chooses when to speak, when to move, and when to walk away without losing peace, because peace is the standard now, not approval. Most people confuse detachment with weakness. They think if you're not yelling back, you must be afraid. If you're not responding, you must be unsure. But that's because they've only ever known power as loudness. Real power is quiet. Real power doesn't explain itself. Real power watches while others self-destruct on their own emotional triggers. You detach not because you don't care, but because you care so deeply about your calling, your energy, your future, that you refuse to let temporary emotions sabotage eternal assignments. Detachment is how you protect the mission. When you're emotionally tied to every opinion, you're easy to pull out of position. People poke you, provoke you, push your buttons, and suddenly you're off course, defending yourself in arguments that never should have started. But when you're detached, people can talk, they can assume, they can plot, and you remain unmoved, unbothered, unreachable, because your emotions don't run the show anymore. Purpose does, discernment does, the mission does. You realize that not everything deserves your reaction and not everyone deserves your response. Detachment gives you clarity. You see who's really for you and who's just pretending. You stop engaging with drama, not because you're weak, but because you've outgrown the noise. You stop posting for applause. You stop explaining your silence. And when they say you've changed, they're right. You did. You upgraded. You evolved. You tapped into a version of yourself that doesn't flinch at disrespect and doesn't beg for understanding. You don't need them to get it anymore. You just need to keep moving. This is what dominance looks like: walking away with dignity, saying less and doing more, keeping your heart clean while everything around you gets messy. People may call it arrogance, but it's not. It's spiritual control. It's self-governance. It's knowing who you are and who you're not. And when you know that, you stop fighting battles beneath you. You stop engaging in chaos just to feel important. You stay grounded. You stay wise. And that right there makes you dangerous. They can try to provoke you. They can try to label you. But when you're detached, you're unshakable. You're in control of your spirit. And in a world ruled by reactions, the one who can remain still wins. That's not weakness. That's dominance. That's power at its highest level. You said, expand the key point 3 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, confidence is silent. Resilience is loud. You don't have to announce your strength when you truly carry it. You don't need to convince the world you're ready when you know you are. That's the difference between hype and substance. Hype needs volume. Substance needs no introduction. True confidence doesn't yell, it moves. It shows up, stands tall, and lets results speak. And resilience, that's what makes the earth shake. That's the roar in your spirit when everything collapses and you still get back up without fanfare. The comeback doesn't need a crowd, it just needs a calling. People are often loud when they're unsure. They talk big, walk big, pretend big because they're trying to convince themselves they're something they haven't become. But real confidence, it doesn't perform, it doesn't posture, it doesn't flex in desperation. It just is. It doesn't care if you believe or not because it's already done the work, already faced the fire, already buried the fear. Confidence is the quiet certainty that you can lose it all and still not lose yourself. It's the look in your eyes when you know the storm's coming and you don't blink. But here's the truth. They don't hear confidence until they see resilience. You don't become powerful by never falling. You become powerful by refusing to stay down. Resilience is the noise your soul makes when you've been broken, humiliated, underestimated, and yet you walk back into the room like you own it. Not because you're arrogant, but because you know what you survived. You've buried versions of yourself that no one clapped for. You've healed in silence, you've rebuilt without help, and now your walk is different, your energy is undeniable. You don't chase, they feel it when you enter, because resilience has a sound. It echoes without words. You see, the loudest people in the room are often the weakest. They're scrambling to be seen because they fear being forgotten. But the confident one, the resilient one, they sit back, observe, calculate, and strike only when necessary. You don't hear them coming. You don't see them moving. Then suddenly they're there, elevated, ascended, untouchable. That's what unnerves the doubters. That's what scares the imitators. You didn't need noise. You didn't need them. You rose in silence, and now your existence is loud enough. And when people ask how you did it, you won't need a speech, you'll just smile. Because you know the nights you didn't quit. You know the moments you stayed grounded when the world was falling apart. You know how many times you could have folded, but you didn't. That's the real flex. That's the power. Quiet confidence and loud resilience. You don't beg to be understood. You live to be undeniable. You don't scream for attention. You walk in intention. And when the time is right, when the season calls, the world won't hear you coming, but they will hear you arrive. You said to expand the key point 4 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, every attack is a compliment in disguise, but most people miss that truth because they're too busy being offended. They focus on the pain, not the revelation. But if you look closer, you'll see it. Attacks only come when something about you threatens the structure of someone else's comfort. You only become a target when your presence starts shaking foundations. The moment you rise, someone feels insecure. The moment you speak, someone feels exposed. They don't attack what they don't fear. They don't criticize what they don't feel convicted by. So when the heat comes, you don't shrink, you discern. You recognize it for what it is, a twisted form of respect. People throw stones at what they can't reach. They hate what they can't imitate. That's not a cliche, it's a spiritual pattern. Envy dresses up as critique. Jealousy disguises itself as concern. The enemy doesn't announce himself with horns and fire. He shows up with doubt, with gossip, with strategic distractions. Because if he can't destroy you, he'll try to divide you, separate you from your own identity. But when you realize that every weapon formed against you is proof that you're armed with something powerful, you stop getting offended. You start seeing the attack as confirmation. You start realizing you're being noticed in realms most people don't even know exist. Attacks are never random. They are precise. They come when you're about to shift, about to grow, about to break through. They are timed to shake your focus, to pull you into emotional confusion so you miss divine instruction. But when your mind is disciplined and your spirit is anchored, you don't react, you rise. You don't clap back, you level up. Because you've matured enough to know that not all battles are worth fighting. Some attacks are just noise designed to delay destiny. And when you really carry something valuable, silence becomes your weapon, focus becomes your defense, peace becomes your revenge. So instead of asking, why are they attacking me, start asking, what is it in me they feel threatened by? That's the real question. That's where the gold is. Sometimes you won't even realize how powerful you've become until you see who starts getting uncomfortable. People who once supported you will start making passive comments. Friends will grow distant. Doors will close. It's not personal. It's spiritual. They were never clapping for you. They were clapping for your old level, your manageable version. But now you're breaking molds, and that makes people nervous. They can't control you anymore, and that's when the attacks begin. But let them talk. Let them plot. because with every attack, they're confirming what you already knew. You're not normal. You're not average. You were never supposed to blend in. The attack is not proof of your failure. It's evidence of your significance. They only throw rocks at bright lights. They only try to silence voices that carry truth. So stand tall. Don't flinch, because when they attack, they're actually announcing that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You said, span the key point of 5 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, spiritual focus eliminates emotional noise because it anchors you in something deeper than what's happening around you. When your spirit is aligned, your emotions stop running wild. You no longer react to everything that moves. You respond only to what matters. The world is loud, chaotic, and filled with distractions, trying to pull you in every direction. Opinions, trends, drama, validation traps. But when your focus is spiritual, all of that fades into the background. You start seeing with different eyes. You begin to discern, not just observe. You don't chase energy. You protect yours. You don't compete. You align. You move from a higher place. People who are emotionally driven will always be slaves to the moment. They're up when things are good, down when things are bad. They take everything personal. They internalize every rejection, every delay, every misunderstanding. But when you're spiritually focused, you understand that not everything is about you and not everything deserves you. You stop letting your emotions sit in the driver's seat. You let wisdom take the wheel. That's not detachment from feeling. It's elevation in thinking. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming selective with what gets your energy, your time, and your reaction. Focus isn't just about discipline, it's about direction, and spiritual focus gives you clarity of direction. You know why you're here, you know what you're called to, so you stop being pulled into temporary battles that have nothing to do with your long-term purpose. Your eyes are on the eternal. You stop being shaken by the temporary. People will misunderstand you. Let them. Circumstances will shift. Stay grounded. Delays will come. Be still. Because spiritual focus teaches you that timing is more important than attention and alignment is more valuable than applause. Most people don't fail because they weren't talented. They fail because they were distracted. They chased emotional highs and avoided spiritual work. They sought feelings over foundation. But when your foundation is spiritual, the storms don't destroy you. They reveal you. They refine you. Spiritual focus trains you to remain steady while others panic. You become calm in the chaos, centered in the noise, anchored in the confusion. People will ask how you're so unbothered, how you're so calm, how you keep showing up with strength while everything around you is falling apart. And your answer will be simple. Your peace isn't from this world. It's rooted in something divine. You become dangerous when you focus spiritually, because now your enemy can't reach you emotionally. The things that used to break you no longer move you. The comments, the betrayals, the silence, the delays, they become irrelevant. You operate from above, not beneath, and that makes you untouchable, because a person who knows where they're going doesn't panic over where they are. They stay focused, they stay faithful, and they walk forward in power, knowing the noise is just a test and the clarity is already theirs. You said expand the key point 6 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said they bet against you because they can't become you. It's not that you're doing something impossible. It's that you're doing something they don't have the courage, discipline, or vision to attempt. That's the root of their doubt. It's not logic. It's insecurity. It's not strategy, it's envy. Deep down, they know you're not like them. You don't move like them. You don't think like them. You don't settle like them. And that bothers them. Not because you're wrong, but because you're a mirror. You reflect everything they ran from. You embody everything they abandoned. Your presence makes their excuses uncomfortable, so they disguise it as judgment. But the truth is, they couldn't walk a mile in your calling. The human ego has a strange habit. It presents what it can't replicate. When people see you rise with grace, when they watch you take hits and still stand, when they notice you refusing to break in situations that would have crushed them, they don't know how to process it. So they minimize you. They label you arrogant, lucky, too ambitious, too different. Because if they admit what you really are, strong, chosen, focused, anointed, They have to face the fact that they gave up too soon. They have to wrestle with their own laziness, fear, and comfort. That's too much for most people. So instead, they project, they laugh, they bet against you, but it's not about you. It's about the version of themselves they never became. And here's where most people miss it. They think being doubted is a sign of weakness. It's not. It's evidence that you've stepped into something rare. You've stepped into territory most people only talk about but never live. You don't just dream, you execute. You don't just hope, you build. You don't just speak, you become. And that alone sets you apart. People will always try to dismiss what they don't understand. They'll try to explain away your elevation because it protects their mediocrity. If they accept that you're real, they have to accept that their limitations were chosen, not assigned. But once you understand this, everything changes. You stop needing their congratulations. You stop seeking their agreement. You stop chasing explanations and start embracing separation, because greatness doesn't grow in crowds. It grows in isolation, in the shadows, in the silence of being underestimated. And when you finally step into the light, it's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. You never needed their belief to succeed. You needed your own. Their doubt was fuel. Their silence was training. Their distance was divine. They didn't become you because they weren't designed to. And that's not your burden to carry. So let them bet. Let them talk. Let them watch. Because the truth is, they saw the spark. They saw the difference. And rather than become it, they ran from it. But you dared to evolve. You dared to rise. You dared to become everything they were too afraid to even imagine. That's why they bet against you, because deep down they knew you were never one of them. You said, expand the key point 7 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro, and outro. ChatGPT said, purpose doesn't panic because it understands timing. When you're truly walking in purpose, you stop rushing outcomes. You stop forcing doors. You stop trying to manipulate timelines. Panic is what happens when people don't trust the process, when they think delay means denial. But purpose knows better. Purpose knows that what is meant cannot miss. It knows that even when it looks like nothing is moving, everything is aligning. So instead of anxiety, there's assurance. Instead of fear, there's focus. When you're anchored in purpose, you're not shaken by the seasons because you know the promise stands regardless of the weather. People who don't understand purpose are always in a hurry. They want instant results, instant success, instant applause. But when you've been called to something real, something divine, you understand that development matters more than display, that the process is not punishment, it's preparation. And with that understanding comes peace. You stop looking at others and wondering why they seem ahead. You stop comparing journeys because you realize that your race is yours alone. You're not late. You're not behind. You're being perfected. The world celebrates speed. But purpose celebrates alignment. And when you're in alignment, you stop chasing moments and start building movement. Panic comes from pressure. Pressure to impress, pressure to produce, pressure to prove something to people who don't even matter in the long run. But when you're walking in purpose, you don't live under pressure. You live under promise. You remember who called you. You remember who sent you. Because of that, you can breathe even when everything looks uncertain. Because purpose is not emotional, it's eternal. It doesn't bend because people walked away. It doesn't collapse because the door didn't open. It stands, it endures, and eventually it manifests. A purpose-driven person doesn't flinch at delay because they understand development is sacred. It's in the hidden seasons where real strength is built. The dark places where no one's clapping, where no one's watching, that's where character is formed. That's where the weight of your calling is forged. Panic tries to skip this. Panic says, hurry up or you'll be forgotten. But purpose whispers, wait. You're not being overlooked, you're being prepared. That's why the person with purpose moves differently. They don't react. They respond. They don't chase. They attract. And they're never in a rush to prove what time will eventually reveal. In a world that celebrates the visible, purpose keeps you grounded in the invisible. It reminds you that what's real doesn't need to be rushed. What's destined doesn't need to be forced. Panic is for those who build on sand. Purpose is for those who build on rock. And when the storms come, and they always do, panic falls, but purpose stands firm. So while others run around trying to figure it all out, you can stay rooted, unmoved, unshaken, because when you're led by purpose, not performance, you carry a calm that confusion can't touch. You walk with a certainty that storms can't shake. And that's why you don't panic. You don't fold. You don't fear. You just keep building because you know what's coming is already yours. You said, expand the key point 8 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, your peace is proof of your power. Not the kind of power that screams to be noticed, but the kind that sits calmly in a room full of noise and doesn't flinch. The kind that doesn't beg for understanding, doesn't chase validation, and doesn't fold under pressure. The world expects you to react. It expects you to defend yourself, to argue, to lash out when things don't go your way. But when you remain calm, when you respond with silence, with stillness, with strategy, it unnerves people. They don't know how to handle someone who won't be baited into chaos. That's when they realize you're not just present, you're powerful. Peace isn't passivity, it's control. It means you've mastered the ability to choose your response, not just emotionally, but spiritually. You're not rattled by insults. You're not moved by rejection. You're not dependent on applause to keep moving forward. You're grounded in something deeper than people's opinions. And that stability, that inner stillness is what separates the real from the loud. It's what distinguishes the chosen from the crowd. When you carry peace, it speaks louder than any defense you could give. It says, I'm not here to prove anything. I am the proof. You become dangerous when you no longer react to everything, because now people can't predict you. They can't control you. They can't manipulate your energy with drama, fear, or guilt. You don't rise and fall with the moment. You stay steady. That's the kind of power that comes from knowing who you are and who you're not, from knowing you were sent, not just born. And when you walk like that with divine confidence, your silence becomes a weapon, your stillness becomes a message, your peace becomes your roar. Most people confuse chaos with momentum. They think if they're loud, if they're seen, if they're constantly moving, they're progressing. But peace doesn't rush, peace doesn't compete, peace doesn't need a spotlight. It knows that destiny doesn't require desperation. That's why people with real purpose often look like they're doing less on the outside, but they're building more on the inside. Their minds are clear, their hearts are settled. They've let go of the need to be understood by everyone and embraced the power of being aligned with the right one. When you're at peace, you stop chasing explanations. You stop trying to convince people of your worth. You stop attending every argument you're invited to. You realize that not every battle is a war, and not every critic deserves a response. Your peace becomes your filter. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. If it disturbs your spirit, it's beneath you. And then the more you honor that, the more your life begins to reflect the strength you've cultivated within. That's what real power looks like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's the person who smiles in the storm, the one who keeps building in silence, the one who doesn't flinch when the room turns cold. Because when you carry peace, you carry authority. And that authority doesn't need to be explained. It commands everything around it without saying a word. You said, expand the key point 9 into 500 words and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, being underestimated is leverage because it gives you space to build without interference. When people assume you're not capable, they don't watch you closely, they don't copy your moves, they don't see you as a threat until it's too late. And that's the power of being overlooked. It gives you the freedom to grow in silence. No pressure, no spotlight, no expectations, just you and your grind, quietly becoming everything they swore you'd never be. And by the time they realize what you've become, you're already too far ahead for them to catch up. The special kind of power in not being taken seriously. Most people want recognition too early. They crave applause before they've earned impact. But when you're underestimated, you're protected from premature attention. You're able to make mistakes, learn, evolve, and refine yourself without judgment. And when you finally emerge, you're not just talented, you're ready. You've been sharpened by silence, forged by solitude, and strengthened by every private battle nobody saw. That's why when you show up, you don't just make noise, you make history. They thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say. They thought you were slow because you didn't move like them. They thought your stillness was weakness. But what they didn't realize is that you weren't sleeping, you were studying, you weren't hiding, you were preparing. And now everything they ignored is about to be undeniable. You used the disrespect as fuel, you used their silence as strategy. And while they were relaxing, thinking you weren't a contender, you were outgrowing every level they assumed would contain you. Being underestimated gives you the advantage of surprise. People don't block what they don't see coming. And when you operate with that kind of stealth, your growth becomes exponential. You don't waste time proving your worth to people who don't believe in you. You just become the proof. Let them doubt, let them talk, let them sleep on you. You'll turn their underestimation into motivation, and that motivation into domination, not by shouting, not by reacting, but by building quietly, consistently, unapologetically. And here's the secret. When you've been underestimated long enough, you develop a level of resilience and grit that those who were praised early on never had to build. You've had to fight for every inch. You've had to work in the shadows. You've had to believe in yourself when nobody else did. That makes you dangerous. Because when you finally get your shot, you don't waste it. You've been waiting, you've been preparing, and you know how rare moments like that are. You don't need validation. You bring your own. You don't need a stage. You create your own platform. And when you speak, they listen. Not because they believe from the start, but because your success left them no other choice. So don't be bitter about being underestimated. Be grateful, because in the shadows, you found your strength. In the silence, you found your voice. And now when the world finally looks your way, you're not just ready, you're unstoppable. You said, expand the key point 1 and 10 into 500 words, and don't make headings, intro and outro. ChatGPT said, victory is spiritual before it's visible. Long before anything shows up in your life, it must first take root in your spirit. You don't win when the world claps. You don't win when the bank account grows or the doors open or the platform rises. You win when you decide in the quiet of your heart that no matter what it looks like, you already carry what it takes. That internal shift, that deep, unshakable knowing is the real beginning of breakthrough, because once your mind aligns with heaven, reality has no choice but to follow. Most people try to win externally first. They chase achievements, validation, recognition, thinking those things will bring confidence, but it never lasts. Because if the inner world isn't healed, the outer world can't hold weight. You'll sabotage the very thing you prayed for. But when you've already seen the victory spiritually, when you've walked through it in faith, you carry a different energy. You walk different. You move with quiet certainty. You don't panic in the delay. You don't break in the waiting, because in your spirit, it's already done. That's why some people can't understand your peace, that they see your situation, your setbacks, your silence, and they think you're losing, but they don't realize you've already crossed the finish line in the invisible. The battle was settled when you stopped doubting and started believing. The moment you said, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I'm not turning back, the war shifted. Everything you see now is just the physical catching up to the spiritual. The visible will always lag behind the invisible, but if you stay aligned, it will show. It must show. This is why spiritual discipline is the most powerful strategy you can carry. Because when you protect your vision internally, nothing outside can destroy it. Disappointment can't delay it. Rejection can't erase it. Delay doesn't discourage it, because you already have the blueprint written on your soul. Your vision is no longer a hope. It's a conviction. And conviction creates momentum even when evidence is missing. That's what separates the faithful from the fearful. The faithful don't need to see it to believe it. They believe it and they see it. People will look at your life and say, how did that happen? They won't understand that by the time the opportunity came, by the time the breakthrough showed up, you had already lived it 1,000 times in prayer and preparation in private. You had already carried it in your spirit long before it arrived in your hands. That's what real victory looks like. Not just external wins, but internal peace. Not just applause, but alignment. Not just results, but revelation. So if it hasn't shown up yet, don't fold. Don't doubt. Just know it's already finished in the spirit. Keep moving like it's done. Keep building like it's coming, because it is. And when it arrives, you won't be surprised. You'll just smile, because you knew. You always knew. You said, now at the end, right conclusion for this speech with a strong message. ChatGPT said, so now you understand this wasn't just about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to yourself that nothing outside of you could stop what was already inside you. Let them bet, let them doubt, let them walk away, because none of that determines the outcome. You weren't built from approval. You were built from assignment. You weren't chosen by popularity. You were chosen by purpose. That's why you don't panic, you don't beg, and you don't break. You are here to dominate, not participate. You are here to transform, not conform. And every single bet placed against you is about to fund the victory that was written before they ever knew your name. Walk like you're already there. Move like it's already yours. And when they ask how you made it through, tell them the truth. I believed when nobody else did. I stood when everything said fall. I detached, I focused, and I rose. I dared them to bet against me, and they lost. Tools.